Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Smart Energy Summit virtual conference. What to watch at DISTRIBUTECH. My name is Daniel Holcomb. I'm the Senior Analyst of Smart Home Research at Parks Associates. And before we get started, I'd like to thank our sponsors for the 2025 series of the Smart Energy Summit. If you would like to join us for the in-person Smart Energy Summit, co-located at DISTRIBUTECH International, please go ahead and scan the QR code that you see on your screen. You can also go to the website at the bottom right-hand corner or check out the promo code that my colleague will be pasting in the chat momentarily. We also have our full suite of Smart Energy Summit events this year, including 2 virtual events, one of which is today. Today we'll be talking with our keynote, Daniel Richmond, with Green Mountain Energy. He'll be doing give us a lot of very interesting information on what's going on with Green Mountain Energy and what they're working on for this year. And then afterwards at 2:30, we have a panel with a great group of industry experts from various walks of the energy management landscape, such as Budderfly, Infineon Technologies, Austin Energy, and Avalon Energy Consulting. But before I get into that, I want to talk a little bit about Parks Associates data on the energy management at home. Right now, the energy management or energy is at a critical point, with grid operators struggling to try to keep up with demand as new loads are added from things like cryptocurrency, AI data centers, and even EV charging. Meanwhile, consumers are dealing with increased costs. A lot of utilities and grid operators are focusing on what's happening in front of the meter to try to get ahead of all this and try to build out the infrastructure for modern energy needs. But Parks Associates does have another take that we think is very critical in being able to manage energy by allowing consumers to take part. And this involves the smart connected home. Consumers do have an interest in integration when it comes to connected devices. Parks Associates has asked smart home device owners if they have any of their smart devices working together in a coordinated way and for what purpose. We found that saving energy was the number 2 reason smart home device owners coordinate their devices into routines at 36%. That was 29% just a year ago, so it is growing. 40% of smart home device households have established a routine, integration and coordination between devices. Simple routines that coordinate lights, HVAC controls, and appliances are appealing to smart home device owners and are a critical way that utilities can bring the consumer into saving energy and reducing the load on the grid. And of course, one of the key devices for this is smart thermostats, which can be coordinated with demand response programs where utilities can lower the temperature for a short time. But smart thermostats aren't the only devices for energy savings. Home energy management systems can coordinate shading, fans, smart vents, and thermostats to reduce energy consumption, while water heaters and other appliances can be set back or turned off at certain times to help shave load when necessary. And today we'll be talking more about this and other things related to energy. We want to be pretty comprehensive, so we'll talk about what's happening behind the meter, the smart home play, which we think is very important to this story. What's in front of the meter, the tech and the utilities, and what the utilities are doing to manage that, and the state of things like solar and EVs, which have struggled a little bit in the last year, as well as energy programs and the newly emerging AI landscape. To start off with, we'll have our keynote spotlight today, and joining me now is Daniel Richmond, the Senior Manager of EVs and Solar Product Development at Green Mountain Energy, which is a division of NRG. Daniel, welcome to the panel.
Good to be here, Daniel. Thanks for having me.
Certainly. Yeah, so I wanted to start off with a little bit of a discussion on EVs. Last year, we saw that EVs did struggle a little bit with sales, and there's also some challenges with different EV companies, not only EV manufacturers, but also manufacturers of some of these equipment related to EVs going out of business or pulling out of the US market. And I wanted to get a sense of what Green Mountain's view is on EV growth and how Green Mountain can leverage that for energy management.
Sure. I think I'll start out just with a quick introduction of who Green Mountain Energy is for those who don't know. Green Mountain is the nation's longest serving renewable energy retailer, and we serve customers in 7 states with competitive electricity markets. Our mission is based around being sustainably minded. We have carbon neutral status, and we're working to build a cleaner, greener tomorrow. Our passion for protecting the environment led us to our mission, using the power of consumer choice to change the way power is made. And now that renewable energy is more readily available, we enjoy inspiring hope and motivating action through the use of clean energy. I will say one of my pet projects, one of my favorite products that's out there is EVs. From a personal point of view, I've been driving an EV since 2012. I had a 2012 Nissan Leaf. I've gone through a couple of them since then, and it is definitely the preferred car in my household. The way that we do it is whoever's driving farther is the one that takes the EV. From a business point of view, from Green Mountain's point of view on EVs, there's certainly a lot of potential in EVs to drive up demand for more renewable energy, but there's also a lot more that happens with an EV. So there's this whole transition of going from gasoline to an EV and ultimately getting through to fueling that EV at home from a solar array on your roof. But the ultimate message is that pairing EVs with renewable energy really contributes to a lower carbon economy. A couple of little factoids, and my favorite talking point is that electricity is absolutely cheaper than gasoline. And if you want to convert costs between EVs and really between electricity and gasoline, take your cents per kWh that you pay for electricity, multiply it by 10, and driving on that electricity is like paying that amount for gasoline. So if you're paying even 15 cents per kWh for electricity, that's like driving, paying $1.50 a gallon per gas. So certainly a great cost savings for customers, and that's not to say anything about the experience benefit that those customers get. So they are cheaper, cleaner, more reliable, more fun to drive, quieter. I'll go on for the whole time about EVs if you let me. But we're looking at an expanding menu of EV models to choose from. Specifically, larger vehicles are coming in, and ones that Americans really do seem to want to drive and want to purchase and get into their lives. So they're certainly still niche. They're less than 10% of the market right now. And the thing to keep in mind is the auto market is tremendous and it is relatively slow to turn over. I remember putting together back in the early years of my working with EVs around 2010, 2011, saying there's no way we're going to get to 10% of the market. That's just not even believable. And it happened honestly faster than I expected. So to see just the numbers that are out there, the numbers that I see every day on the street is great for the economy as a whole, great for the customers driving them, and great to help clean up the air and clean up the environment, even for people who are not driving them. So a number of private and public benefits. I think there's a lot of potential in what they can do outside of that as well. So companies will continue developing electricity products that address customers' needs around them. There's a number of ancillary benefits that I think we'll talk about in a minute of ways they can go. But even starting with some of the initial benefits, the initial ways to manage them and manage the grid, charging EVs at off-peak times, adding demand into troughs and preventing peaks, making better use of the charging infrastructure that's out there. A lot of it is just to say our view on EV growth is we're extremely excited about it. We're extremely happy to see where it's gone so far. And we're looking forward to creating and publicizing products that let customers take advantage of that in as many ways as possible.
Yeah, it's great. The when you mentioned other ways that they can be leveraged through, such as like off-peak charging times, our research talks about our research references say time of use plans, and the familiarity with those programs is higher than you might expect, and a lot of those plans are oftentimes have more utility with EVs, excuse me. And regarding that, and perhaps even maybe scoping beyond EVs too, what are some collaborations or partnerships that your team is leveraging in this area?
So I think the key point here is getting EVs to work with the grid will require collaboration across a number of different industries. Historically, and starting out with EVs, it's fairly easy for electricity providers to say, we'll provide a time of use rate. We will do what we can on the electricity side and for that electricity supply into the home to help a customer make best use of the EV. Doing some of the more interesting things like battery to grid, vehicle to grid, will require working across automakers, across electricity providers, across hardware providers to physically get the energy out of the vehicle and into the load. So there's a lot of collaboration that's going to happen, and it's going to take some development. I think there will probably be some false starts. There will be some experimentation, and I think we're all going to learn together what consumers want, what they're willing to pay for, where value can be created. And there's going to be a lot of work within the industry to come together and provide those solutions. One interesting one in particular is all of the chargers or hardware or pieces of equipment to connect that vehicle back to the home or back to the grid. So more to come on that. Nothing to announce today, but lots of cross-industry collaboration there.
Yeah. And with some of those ancillary devices beyond just chargers, you also have battery storage for solar. That is a key component of that. And also battery storage in general could be used without solar potentially, but is usually used with it. And one of the things that I have heard from some industry experts in this area is that on some level, your EV batteries have more capacity than a lot of your home storage batteries for solar. And it does lead me to question if that's, if there's going to be any changes that you foresee to that, there's going to be any, if you think that maybe the EV might supplant the typical battery storage for solar for those that have both EVs and solar.
Absolutely. So in terms of the batteries themselves, there was a comparison that I came up with, this is probably a number of years ago. I think it's still accurate, which is if you take a home battery, it's approximately 10 kWh and costs $10,000 or $15,000. If you take an EV, it has a battery that's equivalent to 6 of those home batteries and costs about 6 times as much. So in terms of battery capacity, battery power, battery energy storage, all of that, they're about the same. But of course, the car is mobile and acts as a car as well. So it's kind of like buying 6 home batteries and getting a free car on top of it. Will they supplant home energy storage? I think they'll complement home energy storage. Both have advantages. The big advantage of having a home battery, one that's fixed to the wall, it's not going anywhere, is that it can be used when the vehicle is away from the house. The downside of using the vehicle for energy at the home is in an outage situation, if you want to drive somewhere, the house goes dark. Again, consumers can decide what they want to pay for, what services they want, and how valuable those benefits and drawbacks are to each of them. I think the real benefit of the vehicle is just the amount of energy capacity that's available. We've seen all of these battery prices coming down, both for home storage and in vehicles, and enabling that additional option, enabling the ability, the option for the power to leave the vehicle really just turbocharges the opportunity, turbocharges the value creation of what a consumer and what we can help a consumer do at their home and with their energy bill. So certainly going to require some collaboration from the auto industry. It'll certainly require some change in the way cars and their charging systems are built. We're trying to ensure compatibility. And this is one of those areas on the technical side where it really does have to be correct. It is electricity flowing. There are codes and lots of preparation to keep it all safe. And we're really keeping an eye on what we can provide, making sure that we're at the forefront of providing compelling products to give customers value around their electricity plans and their vehicles and their battery storage and their home solar, all of that together to make sure that everybody's really powering towards a cleaner energy future together.
Yeah, yeah. When you think about a lot of the other ancillary benefits of this technology, um, beyond just the home energy management, it's also the ability to participate in virtual power plant programs. I've been a little bit surprised to see that Tesla's been really the leader in this. It feels like they're way ahead of everyone in their virtual power plant program, and we're just beginning. Like there's really a lot of opportunity and white space there. But uh, I wanted to talk too, then switching gears a little bit, no pun intended, to talk a little bit about what the benefits are of going solar without rooftop installation, say through the energy provider, which is something that I know that your team does very well.
Yeah, I mean, you're certainly hitting on all the aspects of energy, of green, of clean, of going into the future, and various ways to produce, use, store, transmit, shift, move all of that stuff around. So we recognize, obviously, rooftop solar is not for everybody. There's any number of reasons why someone may not be able to put solar on their roof. Multifamily, don't own the house, live in a forest. I'm sitting at home. I'm looking out at a bunch of trees that shade my roof and unfortunately make me not a great candidate. So what I've done is said, well, I can't produce it myself, but I can use sustainable energy. I can promote the growth. I can promote the development of sustainable energy by using a solar electric plan. Let's see if I had anything else on that. The great thing about using solar without having to install rooftop is there's no upfront cost. There's no waiting time to install a solar panel array. It's certainly more flexible, and you can shop around for the plan that meets your needs. We really try to do great virtual solutions for those customers who can't install solar panels but still want to get energy from the sun. And we've got a couple of interesting products within that portfolio. The first one is Solar Spark, and this is a Greenie certified plan, actually really making sure that the renewable energy behind it is well supported, well documented. It's not what people sometimes call greenwashing. And it helps customers who want solar power without the solar panels. Doesn't matter whether you own or rent your home. What you're doing is signing up for an electricity plan the same way you always do and getting the sun to power your home without requiring anything on your roof or upfront costs to put anything on your roof. The great thing about this plan is customers help fund a variety of projects, programs, and technologies that make solar more affordable and available. I've actually been in charge of running some of those projects, getting those solar arrays out to organizations that can make use of them. So people on this plan really do help get solar energy into their own home, as well as providing solar energy to other customers and other organizations around the state as well. They've included in the past residential and commercial rebates, so helping other organizations go solar, subsidies for energy storage, other innovative technologies, and supporting and developing new business models to lower costs for people to go solar. There's another one selling carbon offsets. One of the great things about those, and this is kind of stepping back to EVs, but again, EVs and solar go hand in hand ultimately, which is, again, we recognize not everybody can go electric with their vehicle right away. So this is helping people take that first step towards they were previously driving a gas car. Now they're offsetting the carbon that gas car emits. They're not able to plug that vehicle in and charge it and fuel it using renewable energy, but they can clean it up. They can get the environmental benefits of reducing the amount of carbon that they're putting into the atmosphere, offsetting the amount of carbon that they're putting into the atmosphere. And this product is available to anybody who wants to be carbon neutral. So certainly a number of ways of looking at solar energy, looking at ways to make your entire life cleaner and greener, whether or not it's putting actual panels on your roof.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, and I think going back to EVs again, I actually had an audience question about this, so I thought I might pose it to you now,
Okay.
since we're back on that subject. How would you characterize the pace of tech versus deployments and adoption and the integration between energy providers, home and EVs? Uh, I guess really this is a question asking really about the pace of it and exactly what you think about the interaction of all these players.
Sure. Yeah, I think there's a couple of things going on here, and I've noticed that people sometimes, well, there's a couple of different ways of looking at it. One is when people say infrastructure adoption for EVs, they're often talking about charging in public, things like Tesla superchargers, other in public, away from home charging networks. But 95% of the charging that a customer does is at their house, and that infrastructure is already built. People often say to me, there's not enough infrastructure to support EVs, and I kind of want to say in my head, what are you talking about? Every building you've ever been in has electricity wired to it. You can pull up to, certainly any garage, any single family home in Texas, and there is an outlet outside. It may be a 120 volt outlet, but you can work with that. You can drive off of that. A 120 volt outlet will support about 75 miles a day of driving. And I got by with one for years. It's a little tougher. It's a little tougher than a level two. So I did eventually come around to level two charging. But the level of infrastructure and the level of wiring and integration and power delivery that we have in this country over the last, whatever it is, 150 years of electrifying homes and places that people park really does support people's ability to drive an EV. I've always wanted to, and this is not a program that Green Mountain runs. I've always wanted to give people an EV for a week or two and say, look, just try it. See if you can get into it. See if you enjoy it. And if you don't like it, I'll take it back. No questions asked. But it's that getting behind the wheel and having that experience to understand that the infrastructure is largely there. And most of the time, for 90 or 95% of your driving, you can get by with what's already in your house. Are there edge cases? Absolutely. But there's a huge contingent of drivers who can do the stuff they want to do with the infrastructure that's already in place.
Yeah, that's very great. Yeah, that might be a very good way. A trial run like that might be a good way to get people to buy in. I know for me, when I went with a hybrid last year, that would essentially helped make my decision a little bit easier to maybe switch to an EV if I had a trial run first. Um,
Yeah, it's difficult to get, difficult to kind of borrow cars and switch them out and stuff. So I wish that was a little easier, but you can't have everything.
right, yeah. I wanted to talk a little bit more about how utilities interact with customers. Uh, we've heard many times that the marketing can be real challenging for utilities, and so I want to know how you engage with consumers to educate them and increase uptake of energy insights and management solutions.
Absolutely. And I think this is a great point, especially because customers, and I don't mean to slight them, don't particularly understand electricity. It is a very intangible thing. What a kWh is, nobody really has a good idea. So getting them that education and getting them to think about their electricity in a slightly different way is absolutely valuable, and I've found really gives people a lot more comfort about what they're doing and how their life works. I'm going to give two little factoids here before I dive into what we do. One is a kWh is roughly the amount of electricity in one of the old 12 volt car batteries. So the one that starts your gas car that you buy and have to replace every 5 years or so, the one that's this big, that holds about 1 kWh of electricity. The other one, to show just how powerful electricity is if you go out and do manual labor all day, shovel dirt, shovel rocks, move stuff like that, at the end of the day, you will have expended about 1/2 of 1 kWh worth of electricity. So if you go out and do manual labor all day, every day for a month, that's about 15 kilowatt hours. Compare that to the 1,000, 2,000 kWh the customers use in a month, and you can just see how powerful electricity is. So those are ways that I found helpful to wrap my mind around what electricity is, and the way that we communicate and connect with customers around both facts like that and customers' usage and when they're using and how much they're using and all of that. First is through our app. So the Green Mountain Energy app actually lets customers connect their EVs to their electricity account. They can schedule their car to only charge at lower cost or lower pollution times of day. They can see the impact that switching to an EV has had on their fueling costs and their CO2 emissions. Again, how much of an impact does this make? The more detail we can give customers, the more they realize that, yes, all of their actions have an impact. And then the rest of the app is showing how much customers use, when they used it, what was the temperature, what are their ongoing costs and bills, gives them insights so they're not surprised when they get their bill at the end of the month. With the bill, we offer energy breakdowns comparing weather and costs with weekly, monthly, or yearly comparisons. I found this helpful for me to say, oh, I had guests over Christmas, or we were away from home. That's why the usage was lower. That's why the usage was higher. At least I'm understanding that my electricity was used for something. And it's less of a random number or a surprise number at the end of the month.
Yeah.
The last one has been giving comparisons, giving analogies, and giving equivalencies of how much CO2 has been avoided. So this is things like miles not driven, newspapers recycled, new trees planted, making sure that customers can see the impact and relate it to something that is relevant to them.
Great. Yeah, I think that's really good information here, because I do think that electricity and energy doesn't lend itself to marketing to consumers very well. So anything like that helps consumers and gives them an extra resources is definitely good. I wanted to go to another question from the audience, because this one I think is really good and very instrumental. Um, and the question is, what do energy providers want to see from companies working in the smart home? How can companies work better with energy providers?
So I think there's any number of interactions that can happen there, and I always have to be careful when I talk about this because I work in product development, so I have to make sure not to disclose anything that's not already public. I think there's a lot of potential to see what's going on in a home, and harking back to Daniel, what you had mentioned earlier with some of those energy assets. Can we get more insight into them? Can we build experiences for the customer that are a little more flexible or a little less impactful for customers? One of the ones that we do have out today is charging the EV at night. So there's a toggle in the Green Mountain app that says charge my EV at night. It's set up for customers on time of use plans so that they can really take advantage of that plan. We want customers to take advantage of the features of their plan. And one of the things we did was we said, well, if you come home at 5 or 6 o'clock and your discounted hours start at 8 or 9 o'clock, we don't want you to have to remember to come back and plug your car in. We want you to plug your car in the way you normally would, and then we'll control it's going to sit not charging for 3 or 4 hours, and then start charging only when those discounted hours take place. So figuring out ways to make all of this transition and make these programs as seamless as possible for customers is absolutely important when we're developing new products.
Great. Well, we're almost at time. I do want to ask what I think is a really important question, because we are in 2025. It's a new year, and I wanted to get a sense of, what are Green Mountain Energy's priorities for 2025, and where do you see the industry going?
Certainly, I think it won't be too much of a surprise or too much of a prognostication to say we certainly see EVs continuing to sell, seeing that market continuing to grow. I'm not gonna put a particular number on sales or anything, but seeing the continued impacts of some of these programs that have already been in place, some of these products that are already out there. And then from our side, continuing to meet customers where they are on their sustainability journey. So we understand people are everywhere from I'm just learning about green energy all the way through to I've got a custom home tracking system that tracks exactly how much electricity each of my devices uses, and I'm following it all the way back to the source and fully into it. We like to meet each of those customers exactly where they are and make sure that we're providing the services and providing the green electricity that they expect from us and that they want to live their lives with as minimal impact on the environment as possible. So continuing to live our mission in 2025 as we do every year.
Great. Well, Daniel, thank you for joining us. And we do have other questions that we'll try to answer in the chat if we can. But thank you so much for being on the this keynote with us. And we look forward to hearing what you're up to in the future. And then now joining. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
All right. And next, I will be joined by a great panel of a great group of panelists here to talk more about energy management in 2025 and some of their thoughts. All right. All right, well, welcome everyone. And we've got great panelists here representing Budderfly, Infineon Technologies, Austin Energy, and Avalon Energy Consulting. And so I'd like each one to introduce themselves one by one. And while you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you're doing and what your company is doing, I'd also like you to answer that as we kick off 2025, what are the biggest trends you're watching that are going to impact the home energy management market this year from your view? And also, if you went to CES earlier this year in January, what did you see that intrigued you? So I'll start off by asking Beth to go ahead and introduce herself.
Hi, thank you for having me. This is a great panel. I'm really thrilled to be up here with everybody. I'm Beth Crouchet, and I'm Director of Energy Markets and Resource Planning at Budderfly. I did not go to CES this year. I went last year. It was fantastic, very overwhelming. So I imagine this year was the same. I started in demand response at Austin Energy, working with Lindsey McDougall. So I'm thrilled to be up here with her as well. At Budderfly, I work still on demand response, but more specifically now in the energy markets with VPPs and bringing small commercial facilities into the energy space. Back when I was at Austin Energy, working with a lot of other utilities, I realized, as you all know, the small commercial space is very neglected. It's hard to reach out to everyone, to get the mom and pop store or the McDonald's or the strip mall and have everyone engaged to do energy efficiency upgrades and to get into demand response or anything to do with their electricity, in part because they're focused on their margins. They're focused on making sure that their staff shows up on time for their shift, and they don't want to have to care about energy. So I'm thrilled to be over at Budderfly, where that's what we do. The core business model for Budderfly is energy efficiency as a service. And what that means is we work with over 150 brands and over 7,000 locations to finance, install, maintain, and optimize all of the equipment on a small or medium commercial site. So it's a lot of fun. It's everything from cranes to install high efficiency HVACs on roofs to realigning doors on refrigeration and making sure that the entire envelope of that small commercial space is the best it can be. Now, I've come over back in May, I joined Budderfly, and I'm now layering on the VPP capability. So bringing this small commercial space, the additional revenue from utilities and energy markets that they didn't previously have access to. It's a lot of fun, and there's a lot going on here. So I'm just thrilled to be a part of this group and be able to talk about our 2025 year coming up. There's been a lot of news in the industry in 2024 about mergers, acquisitions, companies that are making big plays And I think for 2025, what I'm looking forward to is seeing how they come out swinging. One of the news posts that I'm really interested in is seeing Renew Home launch with NRG, their AI product. So I think they're going to start coming out with their big news throughout this year.
Great. That's very good to hear. And Shri, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Daniel. And likewise, great to be here, great to be a part of this panel. So I'm Shri Joshi. I'm the Vice President for one of the sales segments at Infineon. We call it Industrial and Infrastructure. For those of you who are not familiar with Infineon, we are the largest manufacturer of power semiconductors worldwide. We play into the mobility, energy, and IoT markets. We provide semiconductor solutions that empower the decarbonization and digitalization in those industries. And we offer products for sensing, computing, connecting, as well as actuating, which means power. I was just carefully listening to what Daniel had to say about how things are changing. Energy landscape is changing in 2025, and building up on that. When I reflect, what comes to my mind is when we talk about smart homes, usually it is about smart devices that are constantly communicating with a networking hub. From a power point of view, what we see are two significant trends. In the past, you, me as a consumer would buy a solar system, a battery storage system, a car charger, and then would have these as disparate systems. Through our engagements in the market, what we are seeing is people are now coming out with energy routers, which would essentially replace the electric box at your house with multi-directional flow of power between the systems. So the days where you buy a 60 kilowatt hour battery on a car on wheels, which also you call it as a car, we don't see those far away. Secondly, all of this transition will not be possible if you don't have smart switches. So we clearly see also those dumb things called circuit breakers turning into solid state and smart circuit breakers. Then coming back to the CES, I walked there with two personalities, one as a consumer, the other one as somebody from power industry. Everything was cool when it came to data and knowing how things are going to shape our future lives. But as a power engineer and power semiconductor industry representative, it was music to my ears when they said AI and data, because all those things need a power or computational power that needs to be fueled by electrons. And that's where we come in. It's an enormous potential for the semiconductor industry to grow. And it would not be an exaggeration if I said that power and energy is the new internet. Now, with that, back to Daniel.
Yeah, power and energy being the new internet. That's a very interesting concept. And now, Lindsey, tell us a little bit about what you do at Austin Energy.
Thanks, Daniel. I'm Lindsey McDougall. Right now, I'm the Acting Director of Energy Efficiency Services at Austin Energy, but usually I'm the Demand Response and Technical Services Manager. Austin Energy is the third largest municipally owned utility in the nation. We serve a little over 500,000 customers. I spent 10 years on the electric vehicles team, so I really enjoyed the keynote from Daniel. I too drive an old Nissan Leaf. It's 11 years old now, and I'm still using my garage's 110 volt outlet as my primary charger, so it's so doable. What I would like to see at CES, I did not get to attend, but I would love to attend, is anything smart homes and any way to enable consumers of energy to become prosumers, meaning really engaging the customer in that bi-directional flow of energy. We have these devices now that really give customers the power to use those devices to contribute to the grid, to sell that electricity back to their utility onto the distribution grid and solve all kinds of all kinds of problems. What I'm watching is solar coupled batteries right now. I am all over that. Austin Energy is working to deploy a virtual power plant for residential customers in this next year. So that's what I am all over and trend wise this year.
Great. And now, Raiford, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi. Good morning or good afternoon to everyone. My name is Raiford Smith. I have been in the industry for around 32 years. I was with CPS Energy, Southern Company, Duke Energy, and most recently with AES. I also ran the energy team at Google, and so I've lived kind of on both sides of the equation here. Right now, I'm consulting and basically helping companies deal with or figure out how to deal with data center growth, whether that's on the data center side or whether it's on the utility side. How do they land megawatts? How do they do it sustainably? How do they get it in faster? And what we're seeing here is basically the same thing that I think you see in the residential sector, which is that people want a lot more out of the grid, and they want a lot more out of their utility providers, and they're all struggling to figure out how to do it. I think key to that, there are technology aspects that are key to it, but I think also, more importantly, there's just a lot of collaboration, partnership, and conversation aspects of that I think also need to be happening right now. I did not get to attend CES, as others have said. I've attended in the past. I'm sure it was an awesome show. There's a whole lot of AI stuff coming out. But I think to echo Joshi's point earlier, when I think about what's coming and where I know a lot of the clients I'm working with are focusing on is in thinking about this digital transformation, whether it's I need data centers, whether it's I need new equipment or technology, or it's analytics, the stuff that runs on it itself. One way or the other, that's powering a ton of change in the industry and the equipment we use and frankly, in how we approach business. And that's the stuff I'm most excited to see moving forward. And that extends all the way into homes too, whether it's smart thermostats, EVs, solar. It's just a whole lot of change in a very new world that we have to think about and deliver on.
Great. All right. Well, thank you, panelists, for introducing yourself. And of course, I'm the moderator, Daniel Holcomb, the Senior Analyst of Smart Home Research. If you're just joining us, hopefully you've been here the whole time. I'm really honored to be in the room with such experts. We're really talking about what we think is going to be happening at DISTRIBUTECH, and being with all of you with such talent hopefully gives me a peek and everyone else a peek into what is likely coming up. And to provide some insight in there, I'd like to really ask about the whole comprehensive gamut of, behind the meter and in front of the meter, the energy infrastructure necessary to make all of that happen on either side of that, and as well as like programs, partnerships. Basically, I want to cover everything. And to start with, we just heard from Lindsey about solar. I know that Beth, you work really more on the consulting side of things, where you're getting that set up for the end user, especially more on the commercial side. But I wanted to get your view of what is the current state of larger energy management equipment such as solar, especially solar, because we saw that solar had a difficult year last year.
Yeah, I think it's been, solar industry can be up and down as you track it through the years. But the trends that I've seen are pretty positive. A lot of people and a lot of companies are interested in it. The hard thing at the end of the day is how to afford it. So what I love is seeing more community solar programs become available so that those, Daniel mentioned before, those that don't have access to an appropriate roof can get community solar and get clean energy. But then also it's become something that is so talked about and so prolific now that this is not a flash in the pan anymore. When solar first started coming around, it was massively expensive, and really people didn't think that it was necessarily a great investment. The unfortunate part of the weather that we're going through these days is that there's a reliability issue, and people are starting to factor in the reliability into their ROI. And so what I'm seeing is companies wanting to get solar for the energy reduction, the energy savings, right? All of the beautiful benefits that we've seen in the past, but also for a reliability standpoint, so that if there is physical damage to the grid, they don't lose thousands of dollars of food or equipment because their system goes down. So if they can even take a few hours of time to have that energy to move their produce and move their products to another location, a centralized location, that becomes a game changer for them, working on these razor thin margins that franchises have. So seeing the industry kind of come into its own has been beautiful to watch. And now it's getting access to everyone, whether it's through those programs, those community solar programs, or through localized solar plus. I love what you said, Lindsey, solar plus. That storage capability is essential at this point in the game.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And you mentioned, of course, that solar was viewed as expensive. And I wanted to follow up with a question about sort of the cost of solar, but also expand beyond that a little bit to the whole gamut of the ecosystem when it comes to energy management, and ask you what clients are usually willing to spend for energy efficient installs and how they pay for it.
Well, in the commercial space, it's really interesting. The small commercial area is operating on such razor thin margins. It's tough. They have capital investments that they, have to constantly battle. And quite frankly, a lot of our customers are the same as a utility customer, where they shouldn't have to know all of the ins and outs about energy, right? They shouldn't have to know a kWh for one panel versus another. So being able to spend the mental time on that is one problem. And then being able to spend their capital is an entirely different conversation. A lot of franchises and a lot of small business owners are operating on a really, razor thin margin. They are trying to make it to next year. With most, not most, but with a lot of businesses going under within the first 2 years, you really have to pay attention to your margins. So energy efficient upgrades and solar and batteries seems way out of reach to a lot of companies. What we do is come in and finance that for them. So we take all the risk out of it. We install all of the equipment, take care of all of the equipment, and then share the savings with them. So really, that's been the big success model for us, is that companies don't want to spend the money and they don't have massive dollars to throw at solar at any given month. Even if they think they do, a lot of times it'll change by the time they have to sign that contract. So being able to finance it up front is a game changer for us.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you for giving that information. I wanted to switch because you're more focused on the commercial, and I kind of want to move to the residential side for a second, where in many cases for consumers, they can finance solar panels, but it might be a little more difficult. And there's other ways they can get involved in energy savings that are easier to be introduced to. For example, demand response programs, which I talked a little bit earlier at the top of this virtual conference. And so I wanted to come to you, Lindsey, and ask you about demand response programs and where the industry is at with that. We've seen in our research that there is some attrition where there were past users of demand response programs, and the question is, how do you re-engage those customers? How can the industry better scale demand response programs and re-engage customers that have left?
It's true. We do see a lot of attrition in our Power Partner Thermostat program, the residential demand response program utilizing customers' thermostats. For example, we'll get about 400 enrollments a month, and 300 of those customers will opt out during the demand response season. So the things we're doing to address that include implementing a reoccurring incentive, an annual $25 incentive to reward customers who stick with the program. And we're still permitting them to override specific events. So like if they're having a dinner party that evening and just cannot sit through that 4 degrees temperature increase that we're putting them through, we allow them to adjust their thermostat and override that event. But we want them to stay in the program, continue being connected to our utility, continue getting those demand response season signals throughout the demand response season. And we're hoping that $25 a year will help with that. And we're also looking at adding like a thank you letter at the end of the season to report on potential energy savings that those customers experienced throughout the summer, and just connecting them to the bigger picture of what we're doing, why we're doing it. And that kind of ties into some marketing initiatives that I'd like to deploy within the programs, just about the greater community good that demand response provides to the community, because these single participants all contribute to downward pressure for rates for all customers. And so, that's something the whole community can support. And I'm hoping it'll empower these customers to participate and have more Austinites enroll in our program. Another thing we're doing is just expanding to more devices that don't cause discomfort in the hottest part of the year. So like last year, we launched Power Partner EV, for example, that utilizes charging stations. And for the case of Tesla vehicles, which is our largest market share of electric vehicles in Austin, we utilize the onboard charger of the Tesla vehicle. So we're connecting directly to their car. And of course, that causes no customer discomfort. So we're really hoping to grow that program, and we're already seeing really good enrollment rates. We had a goal of 500 customers last year, and we got 700. So that was promising, and we're looking at ways to expand that program. And as previous speakers talked about, it's great because you still get a full charge in the morning, and you just plug in your car when you get home, and our aggregator Energy Hub takes care of the signal and delays or lowers that charging rate. And so the customer has to change nothing in their habits. They just ride through that event without even noticing it, and they still wake up to that full charge in the morning. We're also hoping to expand it to private fleets, and we are using our own City of Austin fleet. We have 300 electric vehicles driving around city employees to do, parking enforcement and all kinds of jobs around the city, and they plug into charging stations that are connected to Power Partner EV. And right now we have about 75 of those, and we're going to grow to 200 of those charging stations. So that's an example of how we can work with businesses and grow to private fleets. We're also trying to strengthen our relationships with dealerships. We have a really strong EV program at Austin Energy. Like I said, I was a proud EV staff for 10 years at Austin Energy. And they've got a great awareness program and a dealership outreach program, and they host like a virtual dealership with their EV buyer's guide. And so we're hoping to utilize our relationship with the existing dealerships in Austin to get the word out about Power Partner EV and any other devices we can get our hands on. Like I said, I'm all over batteries right now. That's another example of a home device that requires no discomfort from the customer, and we can easily, behind the scenes, dispatch these residential batteries and have significant impact on the demand and curtailment in Austin during demand response events.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I wanted to rewind back to one thing you mentioned about sending a thank you letter at the end that also breaks down the savings. One of the things that consumers are really looking for is energy insights. We see that in our data, but they don't really see a lot of energy insights except for usually their monthly bill. And are utilities making progress with enabling real-time data monitoring and usage? That seems to be a challenging area, but I don't know if you could speak to that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So 2 years ago, we launched Power Savers. It's a residential voluntary program, and we utilize OPower, which is an Oracle product, utilizing our AMI meters. And so all of our residential customers get insights on their energy usage, and they can elect at the frequency that they receive these notices, but I get them weekly telling me how much more energy I used than the previous week. And for these, for a set of our customers, we have 50,000 customers enrolled in Power Savers, it's an additional program. It's a behavioral demand response program where on demand response days, we send them a notice to curtail their energy usage with tips on how they can do it. And then we use gamification to make it fun. We tell the customers how they did and if they did better than the last time and how they're doing compared to other similarly sized houses in our service territory, to give them a little reward for what they did. And all of this is using our AMI meters to feed back these data insights to our customers, further educating them about their own power and their usage of the power, giving them power over their power. And we also utilize Energy Profiler Online, which is available to all of our commercial customers, that gives really detailed energy insights to these commercial facilities, including their demand charge, ways to avoid a high demand charge. And we use that specifically with our commercial and industrial demand response program to help our customers. And when you sign up for our commercial industrial demand response program, you get an even more in-depth analysis and coaching, individual coaching about how you can avoid your demand charge and do better and receive performance payouts. That's our one program right now within the demand response portfolio that gets pay for performance, where there's an actual payout every year for how well the customer did on these demand response events. And we're looking at growing our demand response portfolio to where more programs are pay for performance. We have a spectrum within our portfolio of demand response, from pay for enrollment, which is just you sign up and you get your incentive, and then all the way to pay for performance. And in between is like a pay for participation, which is more like the reoccurring incentive, where if you just continue to stay connected and get the event dispatched, then you'll get paid for participation. So we're experimenting with all of that with the goal to move all of the programs to a pay for performance. So we're rewarding that customer on how well they did to get maximum curtailment from them.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, and when it comes to, of course, energy management, it's really great that utilities do provide these programs and the incentives to enroll them. I want to talk a little bit about partnerships too, because on some level, utilities can't do it all themselves. And Raiford, I don't know if you could talk a little bit about like partnerships and kind of what the utilities role is, and what you also see as a role of other players, such as consultants that connect the utilities perhaps to the consumer.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest challenge that the industry is facing as a whole is that no one can solve the problem on their own. Right now, if you're a data center company, you need to get your data centers up as fast as possible, and the rate limiting step is the utilities and how fast you can interconnect. Similarly, if you're a developer, how fast can you get your renewables interconnected to the grid? And if you're a customer, can you really get the maximum value out of the EV or the battery or the solar or whatever that you've got at your house? And what you see is this bottleneck, and I think everyone's trying to figure out how to solve that. Some of it's going to come from investment in terms of new capital equipment, but a lot of it has to come first from the partnerships that we have to have conversations amongst all the different parties. I always say in the planning world, it's a problem of information. The developer has some information, the RTO has some information, the utility has some information, the customer has some information, but no one's willing to really share it. They're all worried about confidentiality or whatever, and this means that they need to have these conversations, these ways to share information, these ways to basically open up the book and have the connective tissue between what they need and what the other partners are trying to do work together. And I see that only going forward, right? That's the only way it's going to happen, is for people to really figure out how to talk and share information more freely. That being said, I see it's an enormous opportunity for, I think, every partner, every player in the space. Utilities are now really excited about the growth opportunities. They're looking at growth from onshoring, EVs, electrification, and data centers, doubling the size of their rate base in the next few years. I mean, that's astronomical when you start to think about it. It's like the utility that you have today will be twice as big in the coming years to be able to meet the demand. And they've never seen growth like that. When I switched from working at a utility to working at Google, I used to joke that my entire 30 years prior to working at Google, in growth that I saw in utilities was captured in 1 year at Google. But now you see similar type growth numbers looking at the utility space because of all this change that's coming. And like I said, it's a great opportunity, but folks are going to have to figure out how to share and collaborate a lot more to be able to make it come to fruition.
Yeah, that's very interesting. You mentioned the onshoring of the EVs. Tell me a little bit more about where you see EVs, perhaps the charging infrastructure, and I'm also very interested in the idea of like EVs with the possible use of them for virtual power plants. I don't know if you speak to that, but definitely if you could speak to anything else in the EV industry, that would be very interesting to see kind of where that's going.
Yeah, I think it's well established that one of the biggest fears that consumers have in terms of adoptions of EVs has been range anxiety, and also what to do, when their EV is reliant on the grid, and the grid is not as reliable as it, being able to go fill it up at a gas tank or at the local gas station or whatever. And we've seen an incredible amount of investment move into filling that gap. Companies like Terawatt Infrastructure, where they're outgoing and building charging infrastructure, commercial charging infrastructure, both for fleets and for fast charging stations. This is an incredible amount of money has been poured into that space. And regardless of the administration or what's going on, I see that only driving more investment in that area. Maybe it's not the hockey stick curve that we thought it would be, but it's still going to grow and grow considerably. The EV infrastructure offers considerable advantages over the fossil fueled counterparts. The problem, though, that they have to overcome, though, is when you think about one supply chain that's supplying mobility and reliability through that, that has a certain level of reliability. When you combine it with the electric grid can't stay at its reliability level it has today and still convey that same level of reliability and resiliency to customers who rely on that. So it's going to have to get more reliable. As strange as that may sound, considering how reliable our grid here is already, it's going to yet have to be even more reliable to be able to support and help people overcome their anxieties about basically changing out from gas and all those gas stations to electricity and having that in their home. And with that, though, that's where I see the investments going. That's where I see a lot of capital going, is trying to figure out how to build the infrastructure, but also how to make that infrastructure more resilient.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that is still goes really a lot into the marketing and being able to make sure that the consumer is well educated. A very big challenge when you think about all the different pieces that go into this. Speaking of pieces that go into this, I've been talking to all of you, and you all represent different facets of the industry. Shri, I haven't really talked to you yet, and you provide probably what would be the smallest piece of physical infrastructure to make everything work in energy management. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how semiconductor solutions are contributing to enhancing energy efficiency in household tech.
Yeah, so I'll touch both topics, household technology as well as something that is front of the meter, because the activities on both sides are equally significant. I think as far as household is concerned, I have briefly touched on both points. That means devices at home are getting smarter. No wonder that we have sensing pretty much embedded into every device. But what we see also as a seismic change is the OEMs are now becoming vertically integrated. And the reason for that is they see a need to be able to participate in the entire ecosystem. So as an example, HVAC manufacturers were more or less, they were integrators in the past. They would simply bend the metal, integrate the system and sell it for a certain SEER. We see significant activities from them in order to bring in IoT features, motor control features, energy management features into their solutions. That's one change. Second thing, I briefly talked about solid state circuit breakers. So those panels where you had these electromechanical devices, they are getting changed into semiconductor based switches. Why? So that our utility friends can then read as to we as consumers what our demand patterns are, what our your usage patterns are, and then play that into a bigger picture. That's on the home side. The significant change, and probably that goes more along with what Raiford just mentioned, we see changes in three different areas. One is shift in consumers, the second or customers, the second one in systems and products, and the third one is in technology. So let's look at the first one, customers. What we heard is data centers. Yeah, they don't want to rely on the whole process of permitting for that long of a time. So we see activities in that space where they want to equip, they want to do a BYOP, if I'm not exaggerating, buy your own power or bring your own power, and then equip themselves with solar, wind, energy storage, gas powered turbines, or what have you. And probably my colleagues from the utilities here on the panel, they can confirm this or contrast it. Second thing is, let's talk about systems. So extend the concept of having this energy router into a mega scale energy router. So instead of 10 kilowatt hour system, we talk about 500 kilowatt building unit. They want to solve the problems of EV charging. So what they are saying now, the manufacturers, is we will bring in our system that will be capable of talking and processing the power that is generated in solar, wind, if applicable, energy storage. It will connect with the critical loads. That way you have smaller space, higher efficiency, lower capex and lower opex in running those systems. And thirdly, and this is a significant change, again driven by applications like data centers. So right now we bring in three-phase 480 volts feed into a premise and then convert that energy into 48 volts or even lower voltages for data centers. Now we clearly see a trend of eliminating the complete chain and having the capability to connect directly with the distribution voltages at medium voltage levels, so up to 34 kV. And that would mean a significant change in the electrical architecture, systems, subsystems, and components. One thing that we should not forget, you and I as consumers, when we put in a chat GPT question, I'm just exaggerating, we're putting the system to learn things. And when that happens, when the GPUs are under training mode, that puts in a tremendous stress, power cycling wise, temperature cycling wise, on semiconductors. And that puts in a big question mark on their reliability. So we are, as semiconductor manufacturer, not only working on the chip level, but how that chip can become effective in the actual usage, helping our utility friends to keep their reliability up.
Yes,
so that's
yes.
a small world.
Yes, thank you. That's very, it's one of the real challenges that we are seeing is the AI data centers do create a lot of load. And in particular, I'm from Texas, that creates a lot of strain on the grid. So yeah, it does sound like the semiconductor manufacturers, that's going to be a key area. And we're also, what's one of the things we follow for Parks Associates is the idea of like low power chips that reduce the amount of energy. And one other thing I'd like to add when it comes to semiconductors is the idea of building, say, smart home communications protocols into them that can help manage the coordination between devices in such a way that you can coordinate better for energy management. So that's definitely something else that we're watching a lot as well. I wanted to take some questions from the audience here. I think we have one question here from the audience. Can you please advise on how to avoid battery discharges? Let's see, part car, which one has paid? I'm not entirely sure about this question. I might hold that one till later until I interpret it a little bit better. Let's see. Yeah, I may come back to that one momentarily. So I wanted to go also and talk a little bit about briefly, maybe just go around and ask each person another question momentarily here. And with Beth, I'd like to get a sense from you what you think the next generation of energy saving tech you're watching out for is.
Ooh, this is fun. That's part of the highlight of my day is looking at what's coming next and how we can use it, whether it's, worthwhile or not. So I think part of what is coming is that deep orchestration. So we have a lot of companies I mentioned before that have merged and acquired and everything. And it gives that capability to have a smooth transition. And we have the promise of it. I want to see that launch and hit scale. That's going to be huge for us once it's that beautiful orb that we've been promised. I think we're so close on the precipice of it. So I want to see that coming this year. And then as far as additional technology, something that's interesting to me is geothermal and some of the more future state and large scale solutions being able to be used for the smaller scale. And I know that's not necessarily helpful for current residential. It would be more new construction and some of these other areas, but being able to take these additional technologies we haven't considered and integrating those into the ecosystem where appropriate, and how that dynamically changes across sites, across configurations. I think that's going to be where the magic happens.
Yeah, very interesting. And I wanted to also toss it to Raiford briefly, because one of the things that we haven't talked about in this conversation is sustainability. I know that you've worked on that end a bit. How has sustainability factored into the energy priorities for organizations, and what do you think the landscape looks like in the future? Is that even a priority for organizations anymore, or is it really all about the energy savings?
Yeah, I think, well, first looking at like what's the rationale, what's the value that customers get out of sustainability? I think there are two primary values they get out of them. One is, of course, the association with positive environmental impacts, right? And people are looking for that. People are actually demanding that of certain brands and certain types of companies. But the other benefit that they can get out of it is actually a hedge, a financial hedge, which is why the large scale companies actually pursue it, which is to say it's in the trading world, we would call it a fixed for float swap, meaning that energy prices they pay a retailer or that they pay their local utility is variable. But if they subscribe to a purchase power agreement from a renewables developer, that's a fixed price. And they can effectively swap one for the other at the end of the month or end of the year, and basically set their energy prices. So actually, as long as that continues and they get either one or both of those value propositions out of it, I think it'll continue. I think with the new administration, there'll be a lot of potentially changes in tax incentives and kind of the way that is working. I'm not sure how. I don't have a good enough crystal ball to actually figure out exactly what it will change. I do think it will change, but I don't think that will mitigate corporate buying and even smaller and smaller customers ultimately wanting to get into the action. Because as we found in numerous surveys and in lots of customer research, customers don't understand how their energy bill comes about. They don't understand the tie between usage and weather and the price they pay, and anything they can do to mitigate or hedge against volatility, whether it's from fuel prices or weather or consumption, they will do it. And this is another way for them to achieve that outcome. And at the same time, do the right thing for the environment and help further clean up their energy consumption.
Yeah, that's very good. We're coming towards the end of our time here, and I really want to do a quick 30-second lightning round with everybody about, even if you're not attending DISTRIBUTECH, I myself will definitely be there with the rest of the Parks team for the Smart Energy Summit. So I want to get a sense of what you think I'm going to see there at the Smart Energy Summit that might be, if you had to predict it, this is just more of a fun question, what you might expect me to see if anybody wants to jump in on that. Maybe, I don't necessarily want to single anybody out, so whoever wants to jump in first. Yeah, Lindsey, go ahead.
Yeah, come see my coworkers. Cameron Freeberg, the manager of the Electric Vehicles and Emerging Tech team, will be on stage talking about our electric vehicle initiatives. And Holly Prosser and Joe Tang from the Energy Efficiency Services Division will be talking about beneficial electrification. Have fun.
Thank you. Yeah, does anybody else want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot from both manufacturers, OEMs, and utilities. They have a strong interest in data centers and in electrification and in growth. Like, how do we handle it? How do we get it up faster? How do we make equipment that can help us move? Because there's such incredible pressure and opportunity there.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to it. Great. All right. Well, we are, if Beth or Shri, if you want to have one of the last words here, I'll give you each about 30 seconds if you want to just chat about what you think is going to happen, either DistribuTech or beyond, and then I'll close this out.
Well, I only hope and I expect that there will be more action along the lines that Raiford mentioned, mainly about collaboration all across in the ecosystem. Yeah, we are all in it together, truly. And we clearly see a need, even as a components supplier, as an enabler of all those systems. In our world, we see a need of doing a skip level dialogue. That means we need to talk with the hyperscalers in order for them to understand what the capabilities are on a board or on a cabinet level. And we have to add the regulators and the departments to that in order to comprehend the problem completely. I hope that at DistribuTech they're taking that approach and you get to see a complete picture.
Yeah, I love that. Seeing the ecosystem, right? The end to end. It's not just about the behind the meter or in front of the meter or the energy markets, right? Every silo has always had its place of innovation, and it's about bringing it all together and saying, how do we solve this together? Don't freak out. We can do this, right? But we've got to have that collaboration. I think there are going to be a lot of lessons learned sessions where we can get that information from the experiences individually in each silo. The Net Zero Australia talk is really interesting to me. But being able to have those open dialogues, I think we've all seen this as an issue for years, and companies are finally hitting that wall, companies and utilities, of saying, we have to do it. There is no way around communicating with other companies. We've got to all in it together or not, and I think that everyone on this call and everyone that I know is all for it. So I hope to see that, and I plan on seeing a lot of that coming up in DistribuTech and more.
Yeah, that is the perfect last word to end on, a word about partnerships and collaboration. We're all in this together. Thank you so much, panelists, for joining me for this. Give yourselves a round of applause, and all the audience as well. And thank you to the audience for joining us. Really, we couldn't put this on without you, in addition to our sponsors, because you make the conference. If you'd like to learn more about what Parks Associates provides in terms of services, we do offer white papers, webinars, and podcasts that allow us to provide our take on the industry as well as our data, along with the message that you want to get out as well. If you're interested in sponsorships, reach out to my colleague Ashton Gambrell. If you're interested in research, my colleague Jason Paris can help you there. And if you're interested in speaking, Mindy Sue Sternblitz Rubenstein is amazing. And thank you all for joining us. We would really love to see you next time at our in-person event or our next virtual session. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.